your patience and cooperation. Boarding will begin in a few moments.
Hello YouTube and welcome, Phriq here, and I'm making this video to officially and formally announce my conclusion to Season 1 of my Let's Play Flight Simulator X FSPassengers video series. That's right, if you remember in my last video, we crashed and I made some key mistakes, A as a pilot, B as a company manager, and C as a YouTuber, which ultimately led to the demise of my company, Phriq Airlines, in the form of a nearly $1.5 million deficit, which would have been nearly impossible to overcome, considering that I only make about $10,000 in my flights, and that's on a good flight. So at a minimum, I would have needed 150 flights to even break even, and even more if I wanted to get a new aircraft. And that's not taking into consideration repair costs and fuel costs and all the other costs associated with the company. And I know I did not want to make that many flights to try to recover the company. I'm sure you did not want to watch that many flights of me trying to recover the company. So ultimately, it is leading me to throw my hands up and declare bankruptcy, officially concluding Season 1 of my Let's Play Flight Simulator X FSPassengers video series. So let's recap what happened. If you remember, we were flying out of KTVC or Cherry Capital Airport in Traverse City, Michigan, and we're on a very important mission, not only flying two people, but a dying child's kidney to them, to South Bend International Airport in South Bend, Indiana. Well, unfortunately, fate had a different direction in mind, both for that kidney and for our aircraft, as on the climb out, once we hit about 4,500 feet in altitude, our engine died and we lost all power, inevitably gliding down and crashing into a tree just short of Cherry Capital Airport. So let's talk about my failures as a pilot, which ultimately led to this crash. First of all, when I noticed there was an issue with the aircraft, immediately what I did was turn towards the airport and... Okay, I'm sorry. What I did immediately once I noticed there was an issue was try to diagnose it. That is right, I spent nearly a minute trying to resolve the issue before ever turning towards the airport. This was a big mistake on my part, on the fact that it killed a lot of valuable altitude and glide back range, which would have been very beneficial in helping us get back to Cherry Capital Airport intact. I screwed up. Another thing I didn't have was self-awareness of where the aircraft actually was. This was another bad piloting failure on my part. You should always be aware geographically of where your aircraft is, for in the event of a failure like we had, I wouldn't have to turn around looking for the airport. I would have just known that it would have been right there, so I could have immediately turned and headed towards it. These are two big failures as a pilot which helped lead to the demise of our aircraft. Let's now talk about the second big issues that I had as a pilot and also as a YouTuber. I never declared an in-flight emergency. Well, you saw me hit that red button, but this was not actually the button to declare an emergency. It was actually a flap that leads to the actual button to declare an emergency that I did not push. I failed to test declaring an emergency, and that is a failure as a YouTuber. I should have tested it and researched it more to make sure that I knew how to declare an emergency. For had I declared an emergency on the game, you would have seen it declare an emergency. However, it did not do that. So I thought I declared an emergency, but I didn't. What this led to was ATC giving me some pattern entry instructions to enter the traffic pattern at a left base and then finally turn on to final. This is also where a pilot failure came in, is the fact that I thought I had enough glide back range to actually fulfill those pattern entry instructions, where instead, had I declared it an actual emergency, ATC would have said, no, just come direct. They would have cleared out all other traffic because emergency aircraft are priority. So they would have cleared out all other traffic, gave me a direct landing route to the airport, which I should have flown directly to the airport instead of flying slightly south of it trying to enter the traffic pattern instructions. So that was bad on my part again. Let's talk about another failure as a pilot of mine that kind of goes hand in hand with not declaring an in-flight emergency, and that was me not squawking the proper frequency for my emergency that I had on my transponder. That is right, there are 3 ICAO codes that are worldwide recognized that you squawk on your transponder if you have failures or issues in the sky. The first code is 7500. This lets ATC know, or the other controlling agencies know, that you have been hijacked. So if you ever are hijacked in a plane, you squawk 7500 to let those guys know of your hijacking. The next code is 7600. This is a code for radio failure or loss of communications. So just say you're coming in on approach and you cannot contact tower for your landing. What you would do is squawk 7600, and that lets them and the other controlling agencies know that you have radio failure. Then what you would do is you would circle nearby the tower, where eventually they would contact you through lighting. Actually, it's actually something that you need to learn if you want to get your private pilot license or fly in real life. So if you're interested in reading up on it, I would definitely check it out. The last frequency that you can squawk is 7700. This is the in-flight emergency frequency, and the one that I should have squawked. So once I had settled in with my glide heading back towards the airport, after I declared an emergency, what I should have immediately done then is squawk 7700. This lets tower and other controlling agencies know that I have an in-flight emergency. It is another thing that lets them know, in case I don't verbally do it over the radio, that I need to come directly in for a landing, and hopefully it would get them to clear out the other traffic so I can make a direct route to the airport. So we've talked about a lot of failures that I had as a pilot. What about some of those as a company manager and a YouTuber? Well, those are coming up now. If you remember, I had about $18,000 of damage to my aircraft after crashing into that tree. And what I did right away is fix my aircraft. In retrospect, what I probably should have done was sold that aircraft, bought something a little more reliable, and gone on from there. However, it was only about an $18,000 mistake. It wasn't that big of a deal. The big deal comes with me healing my pilot. If you remember, the healing cost to bring him from 75% health to 100% health was roughly $2.5 million. So obviously, as a company manager, I did not give him any kind of insurance, or he did not have Obamacare on his own, because that is astronomical prices for getting yourself healed. However, being stupid and not researching this, what I did is I hit the heal button. I thought it would maybe give me an error or something because my company budget was not that high. Well, unfortunately, what it did is it brought my company balance to a roughly negative $1.5 million, which again would have been impossible to come out of. So that was another big failure, which ultimately led to the conclusion of season 1 of my Let's Play Flight Simulator X FSPassengers video series. So we know about my failures as a pilot, we know about my failures as a company manager, and we know about my failures as a YouTube. But you may be wondering, what about the failure to the aircraft? Well, unfortunately, since I did not declare an emergency, I do not know exactly what happened to the aircraft because the game does not tell me. However, we do know that we lost engine power. Now, some things that made it tough to diagnose were, first of all, I heard some noise from the engine. It almost sounded like it was an idle. I honestly have no idea why I heard these noise. Another thing that you saw is the tachometer was actually registering RPM. Well, what I think this was a phenomenon known as windmilling. So as your aircraft is flying through the air, air rushes past your propeller, naturally causing it to spin. Your propeller is much like this little propeller on a stick. As you can see, there is no engine or anything like that, but if I move it through the air, you can see that it spins. This is known as windmilling, and the same thing happens to your aircraft as it glides through the air, causing the propeller to turn. Windmilling registers on the tachometer as RPM, so that's why I think I had RPM. Another thing that leads me to think that I had an engine failure was the fact that my EGT, or exhaust gas temperature, on my aircraft was completely out. So normally if you're in idle, you have a little bit of exhaust gas temperature. If you're at full throttle, your engine runs hotter, so you have higher exhaust gas temperature. Well, when it's all the way down, it means that your engine is pretty much off. So that is another indication that leads me to believe that my engine did fail. So with the loss of my engine, my aircraft basically went from a propeller-powered aircraft to a glider. Not a very efficient one at that. Now with the glider, there are two big things that you need to worry about. Your most efficient glide speed, and also your glide back range, or how much altitude do you have to get to the location that you need to get to. Well, let's first talk about my glide speed. I actually pulled up the pilot operating handbook for the PA-28-181 Piper Archer II, which was the aircraft that we were flying in the video, and looked at the glide speed. The recommended glide speed for that aircraft is 76 knots in airspeed. Well, finally I did something right as a pilot, because looking at my video, I was gliding, for the most part, roughly between 75 and 78 knots in airspeed. So I was right on that efficient glide speed, so that was good. The next thing we need to look at is glide back range. Well, if you remember, we lost our engine at about 4,500 feet in altitude. Well, according to the graph in the pilot operating handbook, that means I should have had about 7.5 nautical miles of glide back range. When you remember, when I contacted ATC to land, I said that I was about 6 miles away from the airport, so I should have had enough glide back distance to make it, right? Well, wrong, because you also have to consider the elevation of the airfield. Cherry Capital Airport is about 600 feet, which doesn't seem like very high in elevation, but unfortunately it cuts about 3 miles off of my glide back range, meaning that I only had total about 4.5 nautical miles of glide back range, which would have not been enough in real life to get me back to Cherry Capital Airport. However, you saw how close I was to the airport, and that was not even flying a direct route, so you can see that the game was a little more forgiving than real life with my glide back distances. And this is especially considering that I had a headwind flying all the way to Cherry Capital Airport, as the winds were 027 at 9 knots. So I had a headwind, the game was more forgiving. However, I made some mistakes that still made it where I was not able to make it to the airport. I hope at this point of the video you're thinking to yourself, well, if season 1's over, what are you gonna do? Because I want to keep watching more of your videos. Well, have no fear, because I'm actually going to continue making my Let's Play Flight Simulator X FSPassengers video series. However, it's now going to be under the moniker of Season 2. So as soon as this video is over, I am going to turn around and start flying my aircraft for Season 2. Basically, what I am going to do is I'm going to try to pick up where I left off. So what I'm going to be doing is flying the PA-28-181 Piper Archer II, the same aircraft that we crashed, because I only had about 1 flight in it. So we're going to get a little more flights out of it. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my company with a little more money, so that way if I do have an accident, I can hopefully recover from it. The other thing I want to have more money for is some leniency, so I can buy more aircraft, because I want to fly a lot of aircraft. I want a wide variety of aircraft. I think you would rather see a lot of aircraft, and I would rather fly them, so I'm going to do that. The other thing I am going to do with my company is set it up to be a little more realistic with the difficulty settings. So I'm not going to make it easier for me, but I'm going to make it a little more realistic in the sense that, for example, landing lights have to be on under 10,000 feet in the game. Well, in real life, according to the AIM, or the Aeronautical Information Manual published by the FAA, landing lights don't have to be on under 10,000 feet, they're just highly encouraged. So I shouldn't get really any penalties for that. Another issue is getting penalized for not having my flaps on takeoff. Well, in real life, I never take off with my flaps in a Cessna 172, so why is the game making me do it? I am not sure. So those are a few things that I am going to take off. Hello YouTube and welcome! My name is Phriq-O-Pher. Whoa, that can't be your name, can it? Well, you guys are actually right. My name is not Phriq-O-Pher. Hello YouTube, I am Christopher. It is good to meet you. How did I get that name, you may be wondering? Well, truth be told, when I was a wee little lad, I could not say my name as Christopher, so I would introduce myself as Phriq-O-Pher. Well, my dad and family and friends started calling me this, and eventually it became my nickname. As I got older, I finally accepted it, and it became my gamer tag. Now that I'm making YouTube videos, my username is also Phriq-O-Pher, and that is how I got that name. But hello, my name is actually Christopher. I wanted to take this time to say thank you very much for all your views and watching of my videos. I hope that you are enjoying them, and I hope that you are finding them both entertaining and educational at the same time, because that is what I am going for. Also, I want to say thank you so much for all your comments, all your messages, and your questions and your suggestions. I love hearing from you guys, and the interactivity is actually what keeps me going. So if you are on the fence of sending me a question or a message, or just want to say hi, please do so, because I try to respond to every single message or comment or question or suggestion, whatever, that I get. And I don't think I've missed one thus far, and I hope to maintain that trend. So do do send me a message, a comment, a suggestion, because I will respond. Lastly, please subscribe if you are not a subscriber. Hopefully you're enjoying these videos, and if you are, that way you can see right away when I post new ones. Also, it gives me more motivation to create them, because every time I log in and I see that my subscription count has increased, it just makes me happy, and it gives me more motivation to make more videos. So thank you very much for your subscriptions. Thank you very much for your views and watching my videos, and please do send me any comments or questions or suggestions, or just stop in and say hi, because I do love the interactivity between you guys. Thank you very much for everything, you guys, and for all your support, and I will catch you all come Season 2 of my Let's Play Flight Simulator X FS Passengers video series.